Dear friends, today we are going to discuss about the various file allocation methods. Normally, the files will be stored in the secondary devices such as hard disk. The hard disk will be divided into several number of blocks. The files will be stored in these blocks. What is the use of file allocation methods? These file allocation methods are used to store the files in the hard disk in an efficient manner, and also it is used to access the files in a easiest way. There are three types of file allocation methods: contiguous allocation, linked allocation, indexed allocation. First we will see about the contiguous allocation. In these contiguous allocations, the files will be stored in the continuous blocks. That is, the file will be, whenever the allocation starts, it will search for the number of blocks which are continuously free. In that, continuously free blocks will be occupied by that particular file. Consider the diagram which is mentioned here. There are 12 blocks starting from 0 to 11, and the nearest diagram there is a file allocation table. In this table, it consists of file name, the starting block number, and the number of blocks to be occupied. Take the file A. It starts from the block number 1 and it occupies the continuous 3 blocks. In this diagram, it starts from 1 and it occupies 2 and 3. That is 1, 2, 3. First, second and third blocks will be occupied by file A. The next file B, its starting location is 5 and it occupies only 2 blocks. Then 5 and 6 will be occupied by the file B. Then next, the file C starts from the block number 9 and it occupies only 2 blocks. That is, 9 and 10 will be occupied by the file C. By this contiguous allocation, the files will be occupied in the continuous free allocation available blocks. First, it will search the number of blocks available in the hard disk, and also it must be in a continuous manner. The advantage of the contiguous allocation is it is very easy to implement because it is in a sequential manner storing, and it is a best method for sequential file. Normally in sequential accessing, the file will be accessed one by one. So for sequential file accessing, it is a best method. And also the files will be accessed in a sequential manner. There will be a disadvantage also. If sometimes there won't be a available free blocks in the hard disk. For example, consider the file A and it starts from the block number 1 and it needs 3 blocks to be free. If the block number 3 is engaged by some other file and we cannot store the file in the blocks 1, 2 and 3. This is the minimum files, but some of the files will occupy more than 50 blocks and 70 blocks under. So we need these 50 number of blocks must be free in that situation. If it is not free in that hard disk at that time, we cannot store that file. So based on the file size, the allocation will be possible, and sometimes it won't be possible. And another one disadvantage is external fragmentation. As I mentioned above, sometimes free blocks will be available, but the blocks will be not in a sequential manner. At that time, the external fragmentation will arise. The next allocation method is linked allocation. You see the diagram. Here is also a 12 number of blocks. Nearby the table, in the table it mentioned the file name and starting location of the block number and ending location of the block number. That means the file A will be starts from block number 1 and ends up to the block number 9. There won't any specification about the in between block numbers. So from 1 to 9, there are several number of blocks will be occupied by the file A. But these blocks will be connected with a link. That is, see the diagram. The block 1 is linked with the block 4 and block 4 is linked with block 5 and block 5 is linked with block 8 and block 8 is linked with block 9. Up to this 9th block, the sequence is stopped there. So how can we link the file number 1 and number 4? It means in that block number 1, there will be a some space used to store the address of the block number 4. That means each blocks must have some space which is to be mentioned the next block's address. So this is the method of linked allocation. So the blocks are linked together by mentioning the address of the next blocks which is to be connected with that. So in the table, the starting and ending blocks alone will be stored. There won't be any in-between blocks will be mentioned. The in-between blocks will be connected with the link by mentioning their address in the previous blocks. The advantage of the linked allocation is there won't be no external fragmentation because it searches the free blocks available in the disk and it stores the file in that particular free blocks only. So there won't be no external fragmentation and it is also best for sequential file accessing. The disadvantage is the blocks must contain the address of the next block. So the pointer will occupy much of the space. The accessing time will also be large whenever the large size files. In this example, the files is occupied only 5 blocks. Sometimes some of the files will be occupied more than 20 blocks. More than 20 blocks means during the time of accessing, it have to connected all those 20 numbers blocks one by one. It will take time. So the accessing time of a file will be large whenever the file size will be large. The third one is indexed allocation. In this allocation, the detail about all the blocks where the file is to be stored will be mentioned in a single block. Consider the file allocation table. It consists of only the file name and the index block. In this, the file name is A and the index block is 1. That means in that particular block number 1, it mentioned that what are all the blocks to be accessed for the file A. That means block number 0, 4, 6 and 8 is consisting the file A. So from the diagram, the shaded one is the index block. That is, number 1 is the index block. From that index block, the block 0 will be accessed first, then the block number 4, then the block number 6 and finally the block 8 will be accessed. This is the method to accessing the allocating the file by using this index allocation method. It's nothing but the number of blocks which are used to store a single file will be mentioned in a single block. That block is known as a index block. From that block only we can access the rest of the block which is mentioned in that index. The advantage of this index allocation is it is suitable for sequential accessing as well as direct accessing file. Both the method can be easily handled by this index allocation methods. There is no external fragmentation because it will search wherever the free allocation block is there, it will allocate the file. The last one is if the file size increases, automatically a new block will be added to the index blocks. For example, in the above diagram, along with the 0, 4, 6, 8, if you want to join some other block number 10 and 7, you may add it with this 8. Below that 8, 10 and 11. So from the block number 1, the blocks 0, 4, 6, 8 and then 10 and then 7th block will be Excel. So whenever the file size is increasing, we can add more number of blocks in that index blocks also. So this is a major advantage of the index allocations. Thank you.